What if one of the NFL's most promising young quarterbacks wasn't just being overlooked, but deliberately held back? That's the question lighting up every sports talk show right now. And it all centers around Shedeur Sanders and the Cleveland Browns. The story should have been about a young, dynamic QB trying to prove himself in training camp. But instead, it's become a firestorm of accusations, power plays, and a franchise that may have taken the pettiest shot in recent NFL history. The Browns didn't just draft Shedeur, they traded up to get him, and then they buried him on the depth chart, on the practice field, in the narrative, all while elevating less talented names like Dillon Gabriel. Some say it's just politics. Others say it's sabotage. And when media giants like Stephen A. Smith, Louis Riddick, and Jason Lloyd all start calling it out on air, it stops being a fan conspiracy and starts looking like something a whole lot darker. A grudge, a message, maybe even revenge. Because this isn't just about a rookie fighting for reps. This is about who drafted him, why they really did it, and how a franchise might be using the son to get at the father. Deion Sanders isn't just Shedeur's biggest supporter. He's also a major personality, a media figure, and someone who's ruffled more than a few feathers in the NFL establishment. And now, it looks like someone might be trying to get even, and Shedeur's the one paying the price. If you think this is just football, think again, because the real reason Shedeur Sanders is being held back might have nothing to do with talent and everything to do with ego. When the Browns moved up in the draft to select Shedeur Sanders, most fans thought it was a bold, maybe even genius move. After all, Shedeur had proven himself at Colorado, calm under pressure, elite accuracy, poise beyond his years. So why did a talent like that fall all the way to the 5th round? And more importantly, why did the Browns trade up only to shove him straight to the bottom of the depth chart? From the outside, it didn't make sense. If you believe the draft experts, Shedeur was easily a day 2 pick, but somehow he kept sliding and sliding until the Browns rescued him, or so it seemed. Because shortly after drafting him, the organization made it crystal clear he wasn't going to compete for the starting job, not even close. Instead, it was Dillon Gabriel getting the reps. Gabriel, an undrafted backup with nowhere near the arm talent, leadership, or national spotlight Shedeur carried into training camp. It raised a bigger question no one wanted to say out loud. Did the Browns trade up to develop a quarterback, or to bury one? And that question only got louder as training camp unfolded. From the moment camp opened, things got weird. Shedeur Sanders, the guy fans were buzzing about, was barely on the field. Day after day, Dillon Gabriel took the majority of reps. Shedeur, he was lucky to see 4 snaps in a single practice. 4. For a quarterback the team traded up to draft. It didn't add up. And people started noticing. At first, it was just whispers online. Maybe it's a slow rollout. Maybe he's learning the system. But then reporters started raising eyebrows. Why was a quarterback with NFL-level mechanics and a high football IQ being treated like a walk-on? The media coverage exploded when it became clear this wasn't temporary. It was the plan. Shedeur, who should have been competing for the QB2 job at minimum, was being iced out. And no one in the building was explaining why. Instead, fans watched a bizarre priority shift unfold. Gabriel, less polished, less proven, was getting real opportunity. Shedeur, barely a clipboard. And the silence from the Browns front office only fueled the fire. Because if this was truly about talent, it made 0 sense. But just when the questions started boiling, the outrage found its voice and the media pounced. The silence from the Browns didn't last long. Because the media made sure of it. First, it was Jason Lloyd, a respected insider with deep Cleveland ties. Lloyd came out swinging, accusing the Browns front office of actively holding Shedeur Sanders back. He questioned why a rookie showing up early, grinding through every rep, and impressing in flashes was still being buried. His frustration was loud and clear. Why sabotage a kid who's doing everything right? Then Louis Riddick jumped in, and he didn't mince words either. Riddick tore apart the Browns' handling of Shedeur, calling it a blatant misrepresentation of reality. According to him, this wasn't about competition. It was about manipulation. A spin job, as he put it. And he wasn't about to let the narrative slide. But the biggest explosion came from Stephen A. Smith. On national television, he lit into Browns owner Jimmy Haslam with zero hesitation. Called him a coward. Called his comments pathetic. Called the entire situation personal. Stephen A. wasn't buying the idea that this was about football. In his eyes, this was a petty power move. A message not just to Shedeur, but to Deion Sanders himself. And with that, the controversy reached a whole new level. Because now, it wasn't just suspicion. It was accusation. At the center of this storm stood one man, Jimmy Haslam. The Browns owner tried to downplay it all, casually brushing off questions about Shedeur like he was just another late-round pick. But his words didn't sit right. Not with fans, not with analysts, and definitely not with Stephen A. Smith. Because Haslam didn't just seem indifferent. He seemed intentional. This is the same man who gave Deshaun Watson a fully guaranteed $230 million deal, now considered by many the worst trade in NFL history. And now, he's the one brushing off Shedeur Sanders like he's a non-factor. It didn't add up. Jason Lloyd called it out directly. He accused Haslam of manipulating the narrative, trying to pretend like Shedeur was never really wanted in Cleveland to begin with. But why draft him then? Why trade up? That's what turned this from a personnel issue into something personal. Some began to believe this wasn't about Shedeur's game at all. It was about punishing his last name, a grudge against Deion Sanders. A message to Coach Prime wrapped inside a football transaction. Because when an NFL owner starts rewriting history just days after the draft, it's not just strategy, it's sabotage in disguise. And the next voice to speak up made that crystal clear. Deion Sanders had stayed quiet through most of the chaos, but eventually, even Coach Prime couldn't hold back. In a rare and emotional moment during training camp coverage, Deion spoke up, not as a coach, not as a football icon, but as a father. And what he said hit deeper than anything coming out of the media. He talked about Shedeur's mindset, his discipline, his preparation. He shut down every lazy narrative, claiming Shedeur wasn't ready or lacked professionalism. "I know my sheep," Deion said. "I know my son. I know what I raised." He made it clear. This wasn't a kid showing up with entitlement or ego. This was a quarterback who had earned his shot. And watching him get dismissed so quickly, for reasons no one could explain, was more than frustrating. It was painful. What hurt Deion most wasn't the politics. It was the lies, whispers about Shedeur being unprepared, rumors about attitude problems. Reports he walked into camp wearing headphones, like he wasn't taking it seriously. All of it, according to Deion, was complete garbage. But what came next would shake everything, because another NFL insider would soon reveal just how bad things really were behind the scenes. Louis Riddick wasn't done yet. After dissecting Haslam's comments, he dropped a revelation that made the entire room go silent. Shedeur Sanders, a quarterback with NFL-level skills, a player the Browns traded up to get, was getting just 3 to 4 reps per practice. That's not second-string treatment. That's barely even scout team. And it raised one damning question. Is this fair? Riddick didn't just report it. He made it personal. According to him, Shedeur was being treated so poorly that he told his own father, Deion Sanders, not to come to camp. Not because of pressure, not because of media noise, but because he was embarrassed. "Dad," he reportedly said, "I'm getting maybe 3 or 4 reps of practice." That moment shattered any remaining illusion that this was a normal rookie development timeline. And Riddick made the bigger point crystal clear. When you're drafted that low, no one hands you anything. You only succeed if someone in the building is fighting for you, standing on the table, demanding your shot. But that was the real issue. Nobody could say who in the Browns organization even wanted Shedeur in the first place. No advocate, no champion, just silence. And in a league where silence can be fatal to a career, That silence spoke volumes. In the NFL, draft position isn't just a number. It's your leverage, your opportunity, your protection. And when you're picked late, you're invisible unless someone in power demands you be seen. That's what made Shedeur Sanders' case even more troubling. Louis Riddick put it bluntly: if no one in the building is standing up for you, you don't get chances. You don't get game reps. You don't get evaluated. You just get buried, quietly. And that's exactly what seems to be happening in Cleveland. To this day, no one can clearly identify who actually pushed for Shedeur in the Browns' war room. Was it GM Andrew Berry? Was it someone in scouting? Or was this pick just a political move? An empty gesture meant to score PR points or send a subtle message? That uncertainty is dangerous, because without clear support from the top, a rookie quarterback is just another name on a depth chart, one bad day away from being forgotten. And with Jimmy Haslam publicly distancing himself from the decision, it only confirms the worst suspicions: that Shedeur wasn't drafted to develop, he was drafted to disappear. In Riddick's words, if no one is fighting for you in that building, you don't survive. And for Shedeur, the clock was already ticking. At this point, it's hard to pretend this is just bad luck or front office confusion, because when respected analysts, insiders, and even Shedeur's own father all agree something feels off, it's no longer a theory, it's a pattern. And to many, it's starting to look less like mismanagement and more like sabotage. Stephen A. Smith didn't pull punches. He said it straight. This wasn't a football decision. This was personal, a targeted move, a direct shot at Deion Sanders. And Shedeur was just the most convenient way to deliver it. "Don't blame me for this one," Haslam had said, distancing himself from the pick. But Stephen A. wasn't buying it. Not for a second. He called that comment what it really was: a cover-up. A last-ditch attempt to dodge responsibility and save face after passing on Shedeur early in the draft. And then came the darkest twist. According to League Buzz, some insiders believe there was a coordinated effort to tank Shedeur's draft stock. That his fall wasn't natural. It was engineered. Not because of flaws in his game, but because of his last name. Because of who he is. And in that light, everything starts to make sense. The lack of reps, the silence from management, the bizarre pick and bury move by the Browns. This wasn't about developing a quarterback. It was about making sure he never got the chance to prove them wrong. Now, the story isn't just about a young quarterback fighting for a roster spot. It's about what happens when talent, politics, and personal agendas collide in one of the most powerful sports leagues in the world. Shedeur Sanders didn't ask for this. He showed up. He trained. He stayed quiet. And yet, he's become the centerpiece of a controversy that stretches far beyond the football field. Media giants like Stephen A. Smith, Louis Riddick, and Jason Lloyd aren't just defending him. They're demanding answers. And fans? They're starting to see through the smoke. Because when the most talented quarterback in your camp is barely touching the field, people notice. When an NFL owner shrugs off a fifth-round pick as if he had no part in the decision, people talk. And when it's the son of Deion Sanders, a Hall of Famer who changed the culture of college football, people remember. The Cleveland Browns now face a choice: continue down this path of silence, excuses, and shadow moves, or step up and admit what's really going on. Because no matter how hard they try to suppress it, the story's already out, the pressure's building. And Shedeur, he's still standing, still waiting, still preparing. Eventually, talent speaks for itself. And the question won't be why he was benched. It'll be why they were so afraid to let him play.